Assalamu alaikum everyone. Usually when I'm in front of a Zoom screen, it's to conduct English classes. But today it gives me great pleasure in doing the cook along for fish biryani with all of you. Now, Shakespeare, he said that if music be the food of love, play on. But he was not an Indian, because if he was, he would know that sumptuous cuisine is absolutely the food of love. So having said that, let's get started with our fish biryani. Okay, so over here I've got the ingredients to the fish biryani. I'm going to run you through it. I have garlic and ginger. I have saffron, which is an absolutely important ingredient in a biryani. Then I've got some crushed chilli, some turmeric, jeera powder, chilli powder, dhania powder, barishap, some garam masala. Over here I have made on the paste for the fish masala, which we are going to fry off later on. So I've already pre-prepared that. And then I've got the whole jeera, and of course yogurt and tomato, which I've said you can either grate. I prefer to use the blender so that I can get the skin as well. So that's my tomato, my garlic and ginger, my salt, and then I've got some fresh chillies, curry leaves, absolutely, if you're an Indian person cooking, dhania or fresh coriander, and lemon. Okay, so over here I've got my pot of oil, which I'm going to use to fry my onions. I have already pre-fried the potatoes, which you would normally fry first, and then you do your onions thereafter. So we'll get moving on to that soon. And then on this side I've already put on the chana dhal, which I've soaked overnight, and now it's busy slow cooking. Now usually for a traditional biryani we won't be using chana dhal. You'd actually be using masoor or lentils. But my mom-in-law, my sister-in-laws in the family, the recipe for fish biryani has always used chana dhal. So I've opted to go along with that because that's what I'm used to. If you've not tried it before, I promise you it's delicious. But if you prefer to do it the traditional way, you can definitely use masoor instead of chana dhal. Okay, and over here I have our onions, which we are going to braise. I have started braising it slightly, so I'm just going to switch that on, and that can just simmer and braise along there while we start over here with frying of the onions. Okay. So just a tip, when you're frying onions, you must start off by dropping just a few pieces in at a time, because if you're going to drop the whole lot, your oil is going to completely bubble over and make an absolute mess, and you actually don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to drop the onions in a little bit at a time. So you would see that the oil is quite warm. Okay, the pot is sizzling over here, and as it bubbles up, you can judge when you can start putting in a little bit extra compared to what you started off with. Then another thing, you must make sure that your oil is nice and hot, okay, because you want a crispy fried onion. You don't want an onion that is soggy and clammy, because you won't be able to crush it then at the end. Okay, so just keep a fork at hand and you just give it a stir occasionally, and you can just leave this now to do its thing, and we will then move on and check what's happening with our onions, which I have put on in this pot over here. Okay, so the recipe that I'm following, like many of you I'm sure, when you got married you couldn't cook at all. I was definitely in that boat. So everything that I've learned has been from my mom-in-law. She didn't want to come into the camera. I tried to convince her, but no luck. So when we do fish biryani, she used to always say we need to braise some onions first, because we don't have our chicken or meat would be ready marinated, and that would usually put into a hot pot and let that steam off. So with fish biryani, we just do it a little bit differently. We braise our onions first, and when you see the color starting to change like this, it's starting to become golden brown now. So at this point, just for some additional flavor, I'm going to add in some whole jeera and some curry leaves. Okay. So now I'm going to add some of my whole jeera. This just gives a lovely flavor together with the curry leaves. Okay, if you were here right now, you'd be able to smell that aroma that the curry leaves is going to be letting off quite soon. And also you'll notice that our onion color is becoming a very, very nice golden color. So we don't want to over braise it, but we want to try and get it as close to a biryani onion color as we possibly can, and we are definitely getting there. So I'm going to just reduce the heat slightly on this because I don't want it to burn. And if you're coming back this side, don't forget, we're multitasking, we women, we know all about multitasking. I don't have to tell you that. So while that's busy there, we just remember to give your onions a stir over here. And also don't forget to check in on your chana dal, which is busy cooking away on this side over here. Okay. So you know, we always have 1,000 things to do. So we need to get a lot of pots going on the stove all at the same time. I am very much liking the color that this is getting to. Okay, you can see, I'm sure you've all made biryani. So I'm going to switch off the heat now because the pot retains its heat as well. And now it's getting to that lovely golden color, and that is where we want it to be before we're going to add in our next ingredient. Okay, so I've put that off, even though I'm ready to add my ingredients in, because I don't want to overcook it. I'm rather just going to give a stir over here, and our onions are coming along just fine. So we will leave that over there in the meantime. Okay, so now I'm going to get all the remaining, first before the remaining masalas, I'm going to add the tomato. Okay. And shortly after the tomato, this I'm just going to allow to simmer for a little bit. I've put about 10 minutes on the recipe, but I don't know about you guys, I never follow a recipe exactly 100% to what it's supposed to be, okay? And especially when you are dealing with masalas and a spicy dish, some families like it very spicy like mine. Oh gosh, my hubby likes his food, there must be lots of masala. And if I send some to my mom and dad, and it will be, Rabia, you have a lot of masala in your food. But what can you do? You must find the middle line that works for you and your family. So I've actually used a little bit more masala in mine than I've indicated on the recipe. Okay, so we'll leave that onion. I'm going to tomato. I'm going to turn it up a bit. And after a few minutes, I'm going to add the garlic and ginger and give it a bit of a simmer before I'm going to add the remaining spices. And of course, while that's going on, don't forget, we have to keep an eye on our onion. It does take a while So if you're one of those very, very busy ladies and you really don't want to stand and sweat yourself here in front of a stove, you can easily buy ready fried onions. You can WhatsApp or email me later on. I will give you the details if you don't know where to get them yet. And it really makes your life so much easier and you don't have to go through this process. Another thing I want to tell you, if you're also very health conscious, because you know everybody's on the health buzz now, so nobody wants things that are too hectically fried, everyone wants grill, etc., etc. What you can do is you don't have to fry your potatoes, which if you look at the splatter over here, these are fried before the onions. So I mean, they've been fried in oil. So if you want a healthier option and you have an air fryer, you can soak your potatoes overnight, pop them in the air fryer and let them cook there. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to actually put it in your pot before you add your onions, but that's still absorbing oil. So if you're going to be frying onions, then you may as well fry your potatoes rather than go for that option over there. Okay, I think I am ready now to add some garlic and ginger over here. Okay, I'm just going to give that a gentle stir. I'm going to leave this for a few more minutes before I add the remaining masalas. Okay. Let me just wipe here. So that's my garlic and ginger. And I'm also going to check on my dhal. For the health conscious, I also think that the chana dal is a more easily palatable protein than the lentil or the masoor. Okay, so that's not done yet. Alright, I'm coming back to my onions now because they are starting to get to the color that I want them to be. Which is a lovely golden brown. Just before it browns, it's important to keep stirring it. So over here is the first batch of onions that I have fried, and if I do this, you can see it's quite crispy. Okay, and that's what we are aiming for. So to get it so nice and crispy, it's got to be that very high heat. It's got to be stirred continuously as I have been doing. And then when you remove the onions from the heat, they all clump together. So you remove it and you use your fork to separate it. And you just leave it to cool, and once it's cool you loosen it, and then this is the texture of the onion that you should be getting. So I'm just going to, okay. So I use an old tray and I put greaseproof paper on there, so I'm keeping that ready. And all this I've learned from my mom-in-law, so I've just improvised here and there as I've needed to, but really this is her recipe and my family thoroughly enjoy it when I make fish biryani in this way. Okay, so our onions are slowly getting done, and this is also braising beautifully over here. Once I've taken the onions out, I'm going to add the masala. So if you find that your onions are almost done but you need to do something else, then you rather switch off your stove and first concentrate on your onions, because they also burn very quickly. Okay, and we don't want the food to have a burnt taste to it. when my onions are done, I'm actually going to start frying the fish. I can't remember now if I mentioned at the beginning that I only used butter when I braised the onions, okay? Because once my fish is fried, I actually want to use the oil of the fried fish because it's already got all that masalas infused in it. So that flavor then also adds to the actual biryani. What I'm going to do here, I'm rather going to switch the stove off and close it up, and I'm going to concentrate on getting my onions out because the last thing I want is for this onions to burn. I'm going to make the stove a bit more high because it's almost done now. Another thing with biryani, okay, so biryani's got a lot of different elements to it. So it's not a dish that you want to make if you are pressed for time. It's rather a dish that you want to make when you have time to enjoy your cooking. So I know there are different types of cooks. There are those that cook quick and everything is done, but I prefer cooking at my own pace, in my own leisure, and just enjoying what I am doing. Cooking is my second best activity. I would much rather be sitting down there with a cup of coffee and a jolly good novel. That wouldn't be too bad either. Okay, so I've switched off my stove because my onions are starting to brown. Okay, and I'm just stirring it. Another tip. Oops. Another tip to remember, just look at the color of the onions now when I'm taking it out. It's quite light, but by the time it rests on this paper, it's definitely going to darken. So don't wait for your onions to be that dark brown color that I showed you earlier of the onions in the platter, because it's going to get there outside of the oil. So the trick is to take it out before the time. Okay, there we go. I'm just getting out the last bits from the pot. And I'm going to use my fork. Like I said to you, I'm going to separate it because it's hot. A lot of people don't have butterfingers, so they can just touch this hot as it is, but I still prefer to use a fork. Even though I'm cooking for many years, I don't like to burn myself. Okay, there we go. That's the last of it. And there you go, ta-da! Lovely, crispy, golden brown onions. If you're going to touch it now, it's still quite hot. You've got to just allow it to cool, and it's going to still be soft. It will crispen up as it's allowed to rest. Okay, so I'm going to put this on one side. Let me do it over here. Okay. Now I'm going to be able to concentrate on getting my masalas in. Before I do that, let me just check up on my chana dal. Your chana dal you will boil without adding any salt. Okay. Now it still needs to boil a little bit more. It's still a bit hard. Obviously, if you don't soak it, it's not a problem. It just means that you have to allow extra time for it to boil. Okay, so we can leave that over there. And now we can go back to our actual masala. Okay, and yeah, I think we are ready now to add the remaining ingredients to the masala. I can't ask you if you're smelling the curry leaves. I can only ask Mr. Cameraman. So I'm just going to trust that he is getting this lovely aroma of curry leaves and garlic and ginger. And let's go and add the rest of our ingredients now. Okay. Okay, so first in, I'm going to put my barishap powder or fennel. I'm also just going to add a little bit of water because it's going to thicken up. And you will probably notice that my mixture is going to be a bit more thick than yours, as I've explained to you earlier. I'm using more masala. I'm also cooking a bigger quantity than the 1 kilo I've put on the recipe. So that would also explain why I need more masala. Okay, I have to cook extra because everybody's waiting for their tasters. Okay, over here I've got my jeera powder, I've got my chilli powder. My hubby and my daughters, they love the food, must have a kick to it. So if your family obviously loves strong food, then you're going to add extra chili powder and you're going to add extra crushed chillies. Okay, so there's my crushed chillies, there's my turmeric, otherwise known as bori. Okay, I'm just going to add a bit more water again. Just give it a gentle stir. Now the saying goes, the best way to a man's heart is through his tummy. So I'm not sure how many young ladies are watching the cook along and participating in it, but definitely a good skill to have. Okay. So over here I've got garam masala. You'll notice that I didn't put any stick cinnamon or any ilachi, any cloves, none of those. That's all in the garam masala because you don't want them biting into that. Over here I have the saffron, okay, or as we would say, or my mom would say, jaffran. So you can see it's quite fine. That's because I heated it on very low heat in a pan so that it becomes crispy. Be careful not to burn it, and once it's heated through and crispy, allow it to cool for a few minutes and then you simply crush it, and this is what you get, okay? And don't forget that you need to take out a pinch of the saffron and keep it aside because we are going to be using that when we plate up. Not plate up, my apologies, when we prepare the rice for steaming. So we're going to use some of the saffron in the rice as well. There we go. Okay. You'll notice that my mixture is not at all oily at the moment because I haven't yet added the fried fish of the oil of the fried fish yet. Okay. Right, now I'm going to add some fresh dhania. Dhania we always use to flavor our food. And dhania is another herb that people like to cut up differently. So I like my dhania in big pieces, and of course hubby dearest likes it finely chopped. So he says that if it's finely chopped, then you get more of the flavor being released. So I don't want to argue with him. I rather just say yes and leave it as is, and just pretend that that's what I've done when I've cooked. And I'm adding a little bit of lemon. Okay, not too much. Those were cut quite thin. Just wipe my hands quickly. Okay. And there we've got this lovely color. Just clean the sides of the pots over here. I'm going to put this stove on low. I haven't added the yogurt yet, you'll notice. I just want this to simmer for a little bit, about 10 minutes before I'm going to add the yogurt to it. Okay, so I'll just give it a gentle stir. Mr. Cameraman, is it smelling good? Mm-hmm. He's saying yes. Now, I don't know if he's just saying that or if he really means it. But I'm sure he's being genuine. So let me close this up. Just want to give this a wipe over here. There we go. We're going to leave that to simmer for a bit. And then while that's happening, I'm going to move on to frying my fish. So I'm going to remove this pot of oil. And bring my pan up here. Okay, you can obviously see now from the color of the oil that I have already started frying my fish. Okay, so over here I have the fried pieces. I'm just going to fry 2 more pieces for the demonstration. Now, I'm going to allow that oil to heat up, and I'm just going to see how we're doing here. I think we can let this simmer for a little bit longer before we add our yogurt. Okay, and I'm also just going to check in on my dhal over here. My mom-in-law used to always tell me you must cook the dhal in an enamel pot. So I actually, to be honest with you, haven't tested it in a stainless steel pot, so I can't say whether it's definitely the enamel pot that works better or not. I've just blindly followed her instructions. Okay, and if you're wondering from which village this recipe is coming from, I'm going to have to assume that it's from Bodley, because that's where we are from in India. Oh, well, my in-laws are from in India. Ah, there we go. The dal is reaching its right consistency. Yeah, okay. So this is ready to come off. I'm going to switch it off. I'm going to drain the water out, and I'm going to put the dal back in the pot, and I'm going to set it aside for later. Let me just show you. So this is what my chana dal is going to look like. It's boiled, it's ready. I'm going to set it aside because I'm going to need it for later. Okay, so let's get its lid on and let's put it onto the side. Okay. Right, so I'm checking. Okay, I think my oil is almost ready. So I'm just going to have a look at what's happening over here because I don't want the pot to burn. There we go. I must be honest with you, I actually can't objectively say that I know for sure that my cooking is good, or whether it's just my hubby being a kind gentleman and saying, "Oh no, Rabia, food is delicious," because he knows Rabia would much rather be reading or teaching than cooking. Okay, that looks ready now for the yogurt, and our pan is also nice and warm, so let's get the fish in there before we add our yogurt. Okay, so over here is the fish that I have already coated in the masala. I'm going to run through the masala with you now. Let's just get this on here. Okay. I'm going to lower that heat a bit as well. Before I run through the masala with you, another trick I learned is to add some curry leaves when you are frying your fish. And what also gives it a nice flavor, if you really like strong, is if you slit your chillies. Okay, and you put your chilli in the pan as well while your fish is frying, also adds a good flavor to it. Okay, so over here is the paste that I made to coat the fish, right? So if you remember on the ingredients list, it's basically got the same ingredients as the fish masala. So what I would sometimes do when I have leftover masala, if I need to, I would just add it to that. Otherwise, you can just set it aside and use it for another time when you are frying fish. Okay, so I'm going to get some dhania on here. So when I turn it over, at least it's going to get that nice dhania flavor. Okay. I just realized when I went back now, I forgot to add the salt. This is always happening to me, especially in rice. I'm sure you've also had that experience where you cook rice and you forget to add the salt, and only when you're serving up do you realize that there's salt not there. Okay, so salt is also something that varies. Some people like a lot of salt, some people like a little salt, so that's entirely up to your family's taste. Okay, then I'm also now going to add the yogurt. Again, you have the option of going for a lovely double thick cream yogurt. You can go for full cream, or if you want to be health conscious, you can just go for good old low fat. It's entirely what your family enjoys. Okay, there we go. Stir in the yogurt. You can see that the color is going to change now with the addition of the yogurt. You can also see the butter starting to come to the surface. So I have this problem in my household because Akhlaq and Mummy, they like the food nice and rich and full of butter. And you know, the young people, they're all health conscious, so they don't want a lot of oil floating around. So I hope you don't have that situation, and you can just find the middle line between the two. Okay. So now I'm going to leave this to just simmer gently. So while our fish is frying, and our masala simmering. Let's just look at what our onions look like. Remember I said to you earlier on that it will get, you'll see the crispiness when you let it cool. So I'm actually just being very formal by using the fork. What I would normally do is just take my hand and crush it. Okay. But I know the younger generation of cooks, they don't really like to get their hands too dirty. So they would probably prefer to do it this way. I know my daughters would. In fact, they're going to say, Mommy, you can cook it for us. Oops, there we go. There we go. So our onions are ready, and I'm going to transfer it to my onion platter. Okay, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to switch my masala onto this stove over here. You know, we need to have a lot of stoves, a lot of plates, because we do a lot of cooking. And on this stove over here, I am going to bring my rice. Okay, so here I have already pre-boiled, preheated some water. This is for my rice. So for biryani rice, for biryani we usually use basmati rice. It's got a lighter, more fragrant feel to it and smell. And to this I'm going to add my stick cinnamon, my ilachi, my cloves, my allspice, and when the water boils I'm going to add my, my rice. So here we go. Just close that up. And on this side I'm going to flip my fish. You could also use a fork. I just find it's easier when I'm using my hands. Okay, there we go. We can check in on our masala, which is boiling very, very nicely. Okay, I'm gonna have a taste. Okay, lovely. I'm going to give the cameraman some to taste now as well. I think the salt is good. I'm definitely getting that lovely taste of the saffron. It's definitely got a kick to it, so hubby's going to be very happy. I don't know about the people that's going to collect tasters, but it's tasting good. Mr. Cameraman, you want to taste? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me get you another spoon. Okay, just remember we haven't added the dhal yet, okay? And you can tell me if you think the salt is too much or too little. Oh, that wasn't very clever, Rabia. And I still need to add more oil onto it. There we go. Sorry guys, we couldn't do this live, otherwise you'd be the ones tasting. Very nice. Okay, he says it's very nice. Eh? You telling the truth?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're strong.
I did say it was spicy. All credit for the recipe goes to my mom-in-law, Mrs. Aisha Bibi Mahmood, who, like I said to you earlier, didn't want the camera to be put on her. Okay, over here I've got my basmati rice, which I'm just going to give a rinse, and I'm going to add it to my pot of boiling water. You can see the water's already boiling there. I'm going to add my rice now. Again, also bit by bit. You don't want the water to boil over. If you're familiar with cooking with basmati rice, then you will know that it doubles up quite a bit compared to the normal rice one would use. Give it a stir. I'm old school, I'm just going to use my hand now. Get the last of the grains into the pot, and I'm just reminding myself, don't forget the salt, Rabia. Another trick also with basmati, because you're going to drain the rice, it's always advisable to just add a bit of extra salt if your family does have a more salty palate. Okay, go, put that aside. I have 4 cups of rice, so I'm going to add 4 spoons of salt. And also just stir it continuously. And I think my fish is also just about getting done on that side. Voila, I think our fish is ready. Yep, looks beautiful. So for those of you looking for a healthy option, this is another thing you can do. Instead of frying your fish, you can simply cover it with your normal fish-based masala that you have mixed on, and then you can layer it in your pot. Once your masala is cooked, just put it in your pot as is and give it a steam or a cook in the pot. And like you would do with fish curry. So you just let it cook in the masala, and then that's a better option, so you don't have it fried. But for those who like fried fish, it's obviously tastier. You could do it that way as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this masala now into my pot over here, because I want to capture some of that lovely flavors that have gone into frying the fish. Okay, so I'm gonna just put that aside, just tilt it. Again, oh, here we go. Your amount of oil and butter will vary according to what your family's tastes are like. I'm just going to give this just to simmer for a few more minutes, and then I'm going to add my chana dal to it. Another thing about the chana dal, I put down a cup for a kilo, but you may find that that is too much dal. So it varies again according to your taste palette, what your family likes. If they like a very thick dal or lentil masoor biryani base, then you can add it all. If they prefer less, then you simply adjust your quantity and make it less. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to check up on my rice over here. Basmati rice always smells so lovely. It just always has such a lovely fragrance to it. So while the rice is cooking over there, let me explain to you how I'm going to layer the rice. So we're going to layer it rice, then we're going to add butter, some of our fried onions, our dhania, and over here, okay, over here is that pinch of saffron that I asked you to put aside and to add boiling water to. So we have this beautiful, I don't know, orange, golden orange saffron color, which we are going to use in our layers of rice to give it that lovely color, because I'm not going to steam my biryani in the traditional way. So traditionally you would have your masala at the bottom of your pot, and you'd have a net in between, and then you would have your rice on top of that, and you would steam your biryani in one pot. So we don't do it like that in our family. We actually keep it separately. Two reasons for that. I find that it's less oily when I'm keeping it separate, and each one, like I said to you, I have people who love rich food and not so rich food, so then you can adjust how much of the gravy you want to dish onto your rice. And I just find that works better in my family, and that's how I'm going to do it today. But if you want to do it traditionally, you would then put the net on this pot, add your boiled rice to that, and then steam it so that all the flavors of the biryani masala infuse into the rice that's above it. So you have two options of doing that over there. Okay. I'm just going to check up how my rice is doing. Okay, it's almost done. I'm just going to make it a bit high. So just going to add a little bit more fresh coriander to it. My mom always loves to tell us that when we cook, because this is what my granny used to say, you must always make sure the sides of the pot is clean. So I'm just going to use a paper towel and clean it up. There we go. Add that to that one over there. This is too. Okay, I think I am ready to add my chana dal to this now. Okay, I've got a nice thick, lots and lots of gravy in my biryani. Here we go. So you can add it gradually, so that you know what's the consistency you want it at. As I said to you earlier, traditionally you would use masoor or lentils. So another favorite in our family with fish biryani is to boil eggs separately. and to put those into the biryani as well. So that's another variation that you can do. So it's fish as well as the boiled eggs, especially if you have a family that's looking for extra protein. And of course the eggs are not fried, so if you're health conscious, they're boiled. Add the last of this. There we go. Our kettle is ready in case we need more water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more of this masala. This is optional, you be the judge of it. If you want it or not, I just find it adds a delicious flavor to the biryani. And I think my rice is also getting done here. Back to multitasking. Okay, let's just leave this to simmer. We're going to add our potatoes in here quite soon. So my rice is done. As you can see, lovely, flaky, soft in the middle. That's how you test it. So I'm just going to drain this. Okay. So I'm waiting for my dal to get a boil before I add the potatoes to it. Okay. And while that is happening, I'm going to take you through the process of layering my rice. So over here, I've got some butter, which I'm just going to go and reheat in the microwave. You can also use ghee. Start with the rice. Try not to miss them. Oh, I'm trying not to mess here. Not doing a very good job. I would normally do this on the table, but it's just easier for my Mr. Cameraman if I do everything over here. So there we go. You can see I've got my first layer of rice. Okay, I'm going to get the butter. If you give me a few seconds. All right. So again, the amount of butter you add is entirely up to you, whether you want it very rich or not. That's entirely your choice. Okay, so I have my butter, a little bit of my onions, some of my dhania. Just want to get my fork. Dhania always adds lovely flavor. And then of course our beautiful saffron water, or otherwise known as jaffran. Okay. And I'm going to repeat this process until all my rice has been layered. If you don't want to use the saffron water, it's also fine. You will then just use normal boiled water, because your rice does need to have a little bit of liquid in it in order to steam. Onions. You must take all the grains of rice. Don't waste anything. Okay. I'm going to add my remaining butter. And I'm going to add my dhania. I'm back to using my hands now. Okay, let's put that aside. Let's grab paper towel. Onions. Onions give such a beautiful color as well. And now I've got to just go extra with my saffron water, because I missed it at the bottom layer. So what if you have too much saffron water and you don't want to use it all, naturally you can just freeze it. Everything you can freeze. If you don't use all your fried onions, just pop it in the freezer. It will come in handy next time round. Here we go. Okay. Mr. Cameraman, I have no audience. Is it looking all good your side? I do miss having a live audience. I hope you're enjoying it back there at home. Okay, I'm just going to add all this water. Okay. Put that aside. I'm also going to get some more dhania, because it just needs a little, and I'm going to add the last bit of the... We're going to use the onions to garnish when we plate as well. Put it on, and there we go. We're putting it on to steam now. So when we're steaming our rice, we're first going to do it a little bit on high, and then once we see the steam coming out, that's when we're going to change the heat to a lower pressure. Our dal should be simmering nicely. Yes, it is. We're going to add our onions to this now, and then our potatoes as well. Oh, it looks like such a beautiful color. Okay. The onions will also release more oil once it's in. Just wipe my hands quickly. Okay. So now you just have to judge. If you feel your onions look too little, you can add more. It all depends on your taste. I'm going to add a little bit more. Where's my fork? I don't want to mess my hands again now. There we go. And as I said to you earlier, if you didn't want to fry your fish, this is the point in which you would add your fresh fish that you have spiced with your fish paste, and you'll just put it in the pot and let it steam. And you would also add your potatoes at this point. I'm just going to put them on top and then use the wooden spoon to drop them in. Your potatoes also, it depends on your family's palate, if they like a lot of potatoes or not. There we go. Let's see if I can just squeeze these two in. And now I'm going to close this pot and let this get one steam. So that potatoes can heat up very, very nicely while that is happening. Yep, I can see it already. Okay, we're almost done. I don't even know how we're doing for time. So while this is steaming, I am going to get my plate out so that we can plate up. Usually we would serve this with some papadums, or we would call it papad, or some raita, yogurt, dairy, whichever terminology you prefer. You can make some mixed veg with it, or peas and corn, entirely up to you. But it's a lovely rich dish. There we can see this is starting to come up. I'm going to make that low, and I'm just going to pop over and get my plate.